Dear students, welcome to episode 3 of lecture 2 on global megatrends. Now we have the chance to ask Professor Leinfelder a few questions. Professor Leinfelder, thank you for the great lecture. I had a first question about the concept of the Anthropocene. It's a very interesting concept, and I'm wondering two things. I'm wondering, why haven't we thought of it before? And also, this change in perspective, to whom is it addressed?
Well, maybe I start with the second question, because I believe the change in perspective should be for everyone, should be for science, for scientists, because you have a different view on the science and the systemic thinking, not so sectoral, because you have to interconnect different spheres and so forth. But it's also for the public and for politics, because public is important because we have to change our thinking. Normally public says, oh, it's all very bad, but these guys up there, they don't do anything. Now, if you are in the anthropocenic view, that means you are part of the entire system. It makes a big difference that you think, I'm not alone here. We are 7 billion on the earth. So if we change our values, or if we do some little thing, if we just eat differently, I do have an impact on the global thing. So the public is really involved, in politicians, I believe, also are involved, because the concept means what you do now has a strong impact for the future. And politics, of course, is very short-lived, normally with election periods and so forth. And we have to learn to respect the long now. Whatever we do now, or many things of what we do now, we can't stop it anymore so easily, like climate change, like biodiversity loss and so forth. Now, why didn't we think like this before? Coming back to your first question. Well, we had always different concepts of the world, I believe. If I go back to the times before Darwin, or even earlier, let's go much further back. There was the time where, and we still have this view to some extent, of animism. So everything what was in nature we couldn't influence. There were some forces behind this. Then the time before Darwin was that nature was created as it is, and only after Darwin we found out, well, that nature develops independently. Then the industrialization came, so we thought there are items to be solved for our development and so forth. So we had all that view that man can do everything, and then suddenly nature was not important anymore. And of course this was exaggerated, so let's call it the classical nature protection movement started, but this also, to some extent at least, is going into a dead end, trying to preserve as it was in the Holocene. So we always have these changes of attitude towards nature, and you might even say that this is kind of another revolution in thinking, if you suddenly think, no, come on, we live on the ground, on the rocks, and so on. They produce the earth, we need the soils, and on this the plants grow and the animals we use, and our whole industry is based on this. So I think it needed also some time. It needed these other episodes now to come up with that idea. Now, yes, we have only this one planet, and we are part of it, and there's not this dualism of good nature which we have to preserve, and bad culture or technology or something like this. So, I think it needed time to develop this view.
Okay, and linked to this, at some point you were mentioning about anthromes and biomes. Mm-hmm. Is this also linked to this change of yes. Conceptualization?
Yes, maybe I should explain what biomes are. So I spoke, I believe, of ecosystems like a coral reef or something, but biomes are a bigger unity, like they are the tropical forests. This is a biome. There are the boreal forests. So this is a set of connected ecosystems. And as I said in the lecture, there's hardly anything left from this. Only 23% of the earth are pristine. And so we changed these biomes. Almost every forest is not a natural biome anymore, or belongs to a biome system. So we changed it, what some called an anthrome. And this is not necessarily bad. And the example that now this interview we are doing in Berlin, that Berlin, for instance, has a higher biodiversity despite being no natural biome at all, then say then in agricultural areas shows that also our values, our attitudes towards biodiversity can change, and why should it not be worth protecting wildlife in Berlin and only in natural reservoirs?
Interesting. I didn't know Berlin had so much biodiversity.
There are reasons for that, yes. Lots of land not used yet from post-war things, and the reunification kept empty spaces, and many things are, well, old roofs with beds inside and so forth. So, but knowing this, one should feel responsible to some extent for that and say, okay, why not preserve this? This is a part of the value of Berlin.
And now that we're talking about these values, you showed this table where there was the economic valuation of different ecosystem goods and services. And I was wondering, how do scientists get to those values? And also, do these values, are they meant to help us make choices? Like, for instance, we can only preserve so many things. Should we preserve them according to their values, like the ones that are worth more? Or is it really, is their economic value their worth?
Oops, difficult question. Okay, I'll try. So maybe I give you an example of values. Now, I'm working also on coral reefs. So coral reefs is a good example of just highlighting what kind of values there are in such an ecosystem. So coral reefs protect coasts. Thousands and thousands of kilometers of coastlines are protected by still more or less intact coral reefs. Coral reefs are important for fisheries because many fish, they live in, they go to the coral reefs, they breed either there or they go there to grassing, and then they swim outside and they are caught outside in the open sea. Coral reef is what we can call also the blue pharmacy. So there's enormous resources of pharmaceutical substances for counterfighting AIDS and even cancer, and lots of natural antibiotics and so forth. And I could continue this list here. Of course, there's the tourism factor where countries even can live just from the economy of tourism and so forth. So this is just a couple of examples, general examples for ecosystems, goods and services here. Now, yes, I think it is important to calculate the value, and this was done in a huge report. Actually, it was released in several episodes. It's the TEEP report, the Economy of Ecosystems and Biodiversity, where this was not for the first time, but in a global scale now attempted to calculate figures. Now and I think it's good just to make people, to make politicians, to make society understand that this is a real economical value. It's something like a foundation, and from a foundation you can take out surplus which is produced by the foundation, but don't go to the fundaments of the foundation. So I think that's important. Now, judging what is worth being preserved and not based on such economical values, I would be a bit critical. I think it's one part of assessing how important biodiversity is to do things like this. But on the other hand, I mean, where do we like to live? It has all to do with nature, with biodiversity, be it on cultural land mostly or not. So there is this ethical value as well. There is many people define themselves like their home is also in where they want to live, be it now live worthy in Berlin or be it next to the mountains or wherever. So we grow up with this environment, and everybody likes a green field with flowers on it, I believe. So it's not so easy to judge what you need, and then from what you should preserve and what not. From a scientific point of view, one must also say that functioning ecosystems need a lot of redundant elements. That means in a coral reef, just let's stick to this example, you have different kind of professions, if you wish. There are animals, they are grazing on this algae which grow there everywhere, and you need them because if you don't have them, they just overgrow everything. So this is many fish do that, but also sea urchins and so forth. And you can lose one part of it, but you need the rest to support this. So these are redundant systems. So what I'm trying to say is that we don't know enough yet. We know that the higher biodiversity normally makes a system more stable than a lower biodiversity. So the ecosystem goods and services are also better maintained. So we do need a lot of research on this still. And until we know more, I think it would be too early to say we don't need this ecosystem and we need the other ecosystem. And as to coral reefs, I would always say we do need them.
They are very beautiful. So it's interesting because there's these natural systems that we link to these social systems, and that's what also you've been describing in your examples now. And I was wondering, you talk about those rail guards, and they're meant looking at the system as a global system, but how are they defined? And why? Because in your presentations you had different definitions of these guardrails, and there were different, like the CBD had different values than the WBGU. So why does this?
Yes, well, there is not even scientific consensus on where the rail guards should be. In some fields like chemical pollution, we don't have enough data even to say where there should be a rail guard. And that is one reason why we are not so advanced like we would like to be. The other thing is that rail guards are a mixture of, well, risk issues like political decisions to be made, because like if you drive on the autobahns, if you have a speed limit, of course you drive safer than without having a speed limit, but it doesn't mean that if you don't have a speed limit that you will make an accident. So that's a political decision where you set these speed limits. That's on one hand. On the other hand, there's lots of scientific evidence, and maybe it's okay if I stick again to the coral reefs just to be a bit coherent. We know that coral reefs really die off when they are heated up too much. So the 2 degrees rail guard is really important just to, on a scientific point of view, to keep coral reefs alive, because if the waters are too hot, and often too hot, then they suffer from bleaching, and if this is extensive, then they just die off. Just to give one example. So this is a mixture of political decisions and of scientific evidence. And of course, then this is controversial because of course you're just doing like this. If you do it on the UN level, it means that at least you define a roadmap where countries should develop to, and this is certainly controversial and it's a big issue, and this is also tackled in various reports of the WBGU. So especially the 2 degrees rail guard is a very important one, and I believe in the next lecture this will be really fully discussed by Stefan Rahmsdorf, and maybe you also ask him there. So to end this, you also asked, this is on a global view here and how we break it down to the local things. Well, yes, this is a big challenge. We first need that global view, because all these local activities we do, they sum up in the terms of biodiversity, and especially in the context of climate change, they sum up to a global picture. But now we have to learn that local behavior, regional behavior, and global effects are also tightly interconnected, and there might be that solutions are different depending on what issue we tackle and which country we are, but we must not forget the global picture. So what we need is something like the buzzword says, localization, from local to global. What you eat is globally important, because if you and many others do this has a global impact as well.
And also, I guess that's why you stress the importance of democracy.
Yes.
Because then there's this dialogue going on at the local level that
exactly.
can also happen at the global level.
Yes. I think we we need, and this is part of which will be discussed in the next lecture, of this social contract which we success, that we need actions on very different levels, on the bottom level, on an intermediate societal mainstream level, on global governance level, on national governance level, on multi-national governance level, and so forth. So it is, in a way, it's a big challenge, of course, to do this all, but we saw that just relying on global governance levels is not enough, and that's where the Anthropocene concept comes in again, that we have to accept that every one of us, and whatever level it is, has to assume responsibility.
Okay. And this responsibility, it also comes from the values people have. Sure. And you showed really nicely how some countries would prioritize the environment as a problem, or global warming in that case, but then when it came to choosing where to act between job creation and environmental protection, they would choose job creation, but not all of them. And so how do you explain this disconnect, and what do you think is needed to overcome this disconnect at the individual level?
I'll try to address this question in lecture 11, the very end, where we discuss a little bit about like science skepticism and things like that here, but that is one part of it. There are lobby groups and so forth, and it has to do a lot with fear that your own position might be worse than of other persons. So one of my favorite philosophers is an old Bavarian comedian, Karl Valentin, who said, humanity is good, just the people are bad. So that has something to do with this. This is so we don't trust the others often, and then we think if we alone only develop to more sustainability, maybe the others benefit from this, and so forth, or everything goes down. So, well, this is an educational and also a research problem that we have to also tackle these kind of problems, and we'll come back to this in chapter 11.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. And just to stay a bit in this idea of taking action, you were talking about the feedback loops and interactions. And I was wondering, when I was looking at that graph, I was wondering, well, is it possible that we'll get to a point where we just won't know what to do because we don't know if when we're going to do something it might have effects on something else that we don't want to happen?
Yes, okay. So we know a lot, but we certainly don't know enough, and this we always have to keep in mind also. So there will be the transition towards a sustainable society, the transitions towards a sustainable Anthropocene cannot be designed fully by the knowledge we have yet. So we have to respect that there are lots of known unknowns, and unknown unknowns is a way of saying this. So we have to sort of, for instance, really protect landscapes because we don't have an idea what's going on there. For instance, we have to be on the cautious side, and what we are trying to change or design has to be based on the best knowledge we have. Yes. So, and the whole process of the transformation is that we have to have a dialogue of science with society, and we have to always reflect. One example is what I gave about the biofuels. I mean, many thought that's a solution, and now we learned more about the side effects and so forth. Of course, the WBGU already warned at that time that side effects might not be respected enough, but still it was introduced in Germany and other countries. So we have to learn from these examples and then be open and transparent, say this was a mistake and we have to do it different. Yes, but I think the knowledge is enough not to wait longer. It is enough. We have the models, we have the databases, we have high-tech science. It's really enough to know where the problems are in how we can stop them. We can't solve everything yet, but we have to start.
And that's a very interesting idea. It also leads me to my last question, because we have to start somewhere. And you mentioned these three areas that are of really high importance: energy, urbanization, and land use. And if you could only do one, which of these one is the most pressing one?
Well, these thoughts we had when before writing down this big flagship report, we thought, what is the most important thing to do, and is it possible that we keep some things out, and so forth. In this lecture, I tried to open up the entire array of problems here, because we must not forget them. But then, on a practical base, you have to tackle something first, and we think that the energy thing, which is related to climate change, is a prerequisite for sustainability in all other fields, because it's not about sea level only and general warming up. It is about biodiversity, it is about ocean acidification, and it also tackles land use change, and of course urbanization and so forth. So if we start this and then see the urbanization and the land use change first in this aspect, on aspect of decarbonization, I think this is not wrong to do this, but we must not forget that there are other problems like over-nutrification and pollution, plastics in the ocean, overfishing and so forth. So this also has to be addressed here. But there is general agreement that climate change or the stop of climate change or the reduction of climate change is a prerequisite for sustainability in many other fields.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Dear students, thank you for tuning in, and see you next time.
Thank you.